Daniel J. Black, and welcome him. He's one of the good guys. He's somebody who joined the military and then learned from his experience, and now he's working and fighting to end this war. Dan.
It's only fair to tell you all that I haven't been to Iraq since 2004. It's been almost 4 years, and it's very different on the ground today than it was when I was there. Much has changed, much hasn't changed. Just to let you know, so if you want to ask me questions about like today or yesterday, I'm not the guy to ask, but I can tell you that I've been in communication with a lot of people who have been there within the past months, and the situation, so far as I've been told by very credible sources, has deteriorated, and especially regarding troop morale and the efficiency of the military, the way that the personnel of the military behave. The problem with prolonged military conflicts such as these with this country or any country is that with time and with the troops becoming steadily more bored and disgruntled and dissatisfied, so increases the number of human rights abuses. And that's a principal concern of mine, and that I want the troops to come home as soon as possible, and that's one of the principal reasons. I was discharged from the Marines in August of 2005. I pride myself in saying that they were glad to get rid of me, and I was glad to get rid of them. I was offered the opportunity to re-enlist, and that was a good laugh. But it was the culture of the military that actually had me the most turned off to it by then. I was not very politicized by the conflict, but in recognizing the way that the military functions, has always functioned, and I'm sure it continues to function, it is not, I'm sure you can all imagine, it is not as it's portrayed in these recruiting campaigns and these movies that you see with John Wayne and such. There is only one core value, and that is obedience. And when you step outside of your command's good graces, as I had on a number of occasions, inadvertently at first, you realize very quickly what's valued and what's not valued in the military. And this is what we need to understand about our own troops, our own young men and women who are put into these circumstances. And these are not bad people on the whole, but rather they are in very extraordinary situations which account largely for what's going on that's wrong. This is not to excuse what they do, but this is to say that if we want these things to cease, that we need to change the situations, change the circumstances. And that's why essentially the troops need to come home as soon as possible, because we are making bad people out of young people by putting them into these situations. After being discharged, I started college immediately, and then I became involved in the anti-war movement gradually over time. And what I found, this was about 2.5 years ago, and it's been good and bad. We've had some victories. I think that we've seen a sea change in public thought, which is fantastic. And then there's some disappointments in the only measure that I really consider the most relevant, the number of troops and the amount of time that we continue to be involved in Iraq. It has not turned toward what I would consider a preferable situation. So my focus is on how do we effect the change we want in that measure. I think that it's fantastic that since my becoming involved in the anti-war movement, the number of Americans that are against the war has increased substantially. That's a great job. We can pat ourselves on the back for that. But as far as the campaign is concerned, we need to keep working very hard, because that has not changed. In fact, it's gotten worse. Not only do we have to keep working hard, but we need to reconsider what it is we're doing, because what we are doing, what we have been doing for 5 years, is abundantly clear to me and many people that I talk to, that the government, the real decision makers, whoever has this operation continuing, is not affected by the public will, whether it's a minority or a majority, whether it's a sizable majority that wants immediate withdrawal. There doesn't seem to be any connection between the will of the people and the actions of our leadership. So, I tend to pose the question, is it a good idea to continue investing resources in trying to reach that final 20 or 25 or 30% that we haven't won over yet, when the 70% that we've got so far doesn't seem to sway our leadership? And how does a citizen who feels disempowered, as I do, stop a war crime that is on the scale of the war in Iraq? And that question has answers, and one of the answers is to change your strategy. When you're doing something and you're trying to accomplish a goal and your means of accomplishment are not working, it makes sense to try something else. And that's a question that I struggle with. It's a question that we should all struggle with if we want to see that change. I've been very disappointed at some of the actions that I've been to. I'll be candid with you all, that it's not always a pleasure to be involved in something when you can't distract yourself from this nagging belief of yours that you're not working toward an objective, and that you're treading water, or you're losing ground, or your actions and your energies and your enthusiasm are just entirely misdirected. And that happens from time to time, and with people we can forgive ourselves for making mistakes. But I hope that to consider that critically is why we're all here. Evan told me that the anti-war movement is losing momentum, and that's why we need to get together and ask ourselves, what is happening? What do we need to do? We still want this war to end, and how can we get that to happen? I've been involved in actions, by and large, they're like these. I see people who are closer to my parents' age than they are to my age. We're very fortunate. I see some young people here. That's very encouraging. And I think that my opinion of my generation is that we need to appeal to them by contouring our strategies and our actions to things that are appealing, strategies that are appealing to them. We do really need practical approaches. If someone my age is able to see that his or her work is observably tied to something productive, something measurable, something that they can really see a difference, that'll be something that they might want to become involved with. If it becomes too abstract or convoluted, if they start thinking, well, if I'm just standing on the side of the street holding a sign and getting people to honk at me every weekend, I just don't know that that's moving us toward where we want to be. Maybe it is moving us toward where we want to be, but if someone my age isn't able to see that, then it might not be appealing enough to draw them in. And this is where counter-recruiting really comes into play, because if you can reduce the numbers of young people going into the military, well, that's a very observable effect, and that's something that can really engender a sense of hope and a sense of accomplishment in the people in our movement. And that's only one creative idea. I can't take credit for the idea of counter-recruiting. I think it's been around longer than I have. Unfortunately, it didn't reach me in 1999, and that's part of the reason I'm here. So that's okay, though. I think that there's a lot of creative ideas that we can come up with, and especially the more young people that we're able to include in the movement, the more creative ideas we'll be able to generate. There's a value in the seasoned experience that men and women like my father, who have protested the Vietnam War and everything since, bring to the table. And then there's a value to people who have no experience, and it's the interaction of those two generations that I think will be most optimal for our movement. Right now we have a lot of participation from people in my father's generation, and that's great. We really need to figure out how we're going to get people of other generations to get involved to make it even better, I think. And also, one thing that's been despairing that I just want to touch on very quickly is that in every event that I've ever been a part of, we speak of the Iraq War as though it were a problem. The Iraq War is not a problem. The Iraq War is just part of the problem that you're able to see. it's the effect, it's the symptom of the disease. And if it were not for the war in Iraq, we would have a war in Iran. If it weren't for these wars in the Middle East, we would have wars in the Far East. It's the foreign policy of this country, and this is not really so much subject to dispute. I don't think that I think I probably have the consensus in the room when I say that, but you can review, the Project for a New American Century and various documents. It's very explicit, it's very clear. The United States reserves the right to launch preemptive military strikes against any country that it anticipates might be a threat to its global dominance or its access to strategic markets and industries. The threats against the United States need not even be against our lives or our own personal security. If they threaten our wealth, any kind of military action, and any kind of military action is just the sort of military action we observe, is okay. It's endorsed by our government, and Iraq happens to have a great deal of oil, as I'm sure we all know, and that would be considered a strategic resource. That accounts for why we're there, and also that it was at the time we attacked it, and still is today, the most defenseless country of that part of the world. So when we come together and we talk about ending the war, I hope we're not talking about ending the Iraq war. We should be talking about ending the war that our country is waging against this world, the world's people, and anyone who has the unfortunate circumstance of living on top of resources that our wealthy elites desire.